Welcome to Anews. I'm Amir Taslim, and you're watching Turkey's Diplomacy. Tensions between Pakistan and Afghanistan have reached a critical point, and today in Istanbul, both sides will sit down for what could be the final round of talks mediated by Türkiye and Qatar. Our correspondent and senior political analyst Javed Rana sat down with the Pakistani defense minister this week in an exclusive interview for Anews. Khwaja Asif says Islamabad is hoping for a peaceful breakthrough, but the warning to the Taliban remains very clear after weeks of border clashes. And as tense negotiations unfold, Pakistan says it's also watching the crisis in Gaza closely while strengthening its ties with Turkey at a time when regional alignments are shifting rapidly.
Hello, this is your host Javed Rana in Islamabad. Joining us today, Pakistan's Defense Minister Khwaja Muhammad Asif. At the heart of our discussion is going to be Pakistan-Afghanistan clashes, Pakistan-India border tension, Gaza peace accord, and bilateral relation between Pakistan and Turkey. Thank you so much, Khwaja sir, for being with the Anews. If I could begin with the Pakistan-Afghanistan clashes, can you just explain to the international audience what led Pakistan to this situation where both countries have been firing at each other?
Basically, the reason of these clashes is the border crossing of the Taliban from Afghanistan. They have their hideouts over there. They
Pakistani brand of Taliban?
No, both brands of Taliban. Yeah. They have hideouts over there. They have their training camps over there, and they have the backing of the Kabul government. In last few weeks, the number of Taliban who crossed over into Pakistan to create some situation for us and terrorist attacks or otherwise, the number of Taliban killed by Pakistan armed forces, most of them were Afghans. They were not Pakistanis.
Most of them
were Afghans. So that is something very alarming, and that proves our point that the Afghan government, or whatever you can call it, government or whatever, the Taliban presently controlling government in Kabul, they are fully backing the terrorist attacks in Pakistan. And as I earlier said, it's not only TTP, it is TTPA also.
Which so is Afghanistan.
Afghanistan. We are confronting both these elements who are exporting terrorism to Pakistan. And we have absolutely no doubt about it. Terrorism in KP and terrorism in Balochistan, patronization of TTP and BLA is directly coming from Kabul.
What is your assessment? What has led Afghan government to send its militants and back Pakistani brand of Taliban militants and carry out terrorism in Pakistan? What could be
it's a joint venture now. It's not TTP. It's a joint venture.
What do they want to achieve?
I don't know. I think this is the only business they know. They don't know any other business. So this, the rate of Kabul in Afghanistan is limited. There are pockets of influence of other terrorist groups. So it's a sort of an international gathering of terrorist organizations from different parts of the world who are living or training or housed in Afghanistan. Daesh, Al-Qaeda, you name any terrorist organization, they're all there. It's very unfortunate. I think Kabul, after they took over Kabul and the NATO forces exited, they should have concentrated on giving a giving peace to their country, giving peace to their neighbors also, or creating an environment in this whole region.
Do you have some lingering suspicion that they have their brand of ideological agenda which they want to impose onto Pakistan?
If they have this sort of, thing in their mind, or any plan to that effect, I think it's complete madness, Pakistan, they have lived over here. These the total leadership now in Kabul, they had families over here. Some of them still have families over here.
And previously, Pakistan backed them when the NATO troops.
No, they came as refugees. They came as refugees when Soviet Union invaded Afghanistan way back in the 70s, and then in the 80s there was a war between Soviet forces, Afghan forces, and Taliban's in those days, and which brought some sort of semblance of government in Kabul for about 8-9 years. And then again, Kabul was taken over by Taliban, the brand, the franchise, I call it. And I think, I don't remember, but it was in the late 90s. And subsequently, when Afghanistan was attacked by NATO forces, by Americans, after 9/11, then they went back into wilderness and started fighting against the NATO forces. And that continued, if I remember it correctly, for almost 2 decades,
Now, you have no ceasefire agreement with them. Do you foresee that this will hold ground, or you fear that it would not long last?
It is a fragile situation. It is holding as we speak, but it is fragile because the basis of a permanent ceasefire will be that no incursion takes place into Pakistani territory sponsored by Kabul, whether it's their brand of TT, Taliban, or Pakistani brand of Taliban. They are actually sister concerns, And backing of Kabul, if it is not there, they won't have a chance to exist even for a day.
You were heading the negotiations, and what is your assessment? What exactly they are looking for out of negotiations?
It's a very pertinent question. Their interest, in my humble opinion or my assessment, is that peace should be restored to this region, Afghanistan, Pakistan, Central Asia, Iran, all that. Because we all have interest in peace, in connectivity, in trade, and taking advantage through peaceful means, through joint efforts of each other's geography. For instance, if connectivity is there, the Central Asian countries can approach the ports of Pakistan and Iran through Afghanistan. So their landlocked situation is they can have an export.
You foresee that happening with Taliban?
No, I'm just suggesting it can only happen when there is peace in our region, So that is, I think, peace. The dividends of peace are so great, so big, that Taliban should think about it. That if peace is restored in their country or in the bordering countries where they export terrorism, like Pakistan, everybody will benefit out of it,
Afghan media is reporting that the Afghan government is also looking for similar mechanism to what they claim that there are Pakistan is sheltering Daesh militants. And they're also claiming that USA is being allowed to their drones to carry out some kind of a monitoring over Afghanistan.
It's just a claim with no evidence or no evidence to back up their claim. They don't have any evidence. Why would we want peace? Why would we back Daesh or any other terrorist outfit? The reason being that we have burnt our fingers over the years. Way back in the 80s and 90s and then beginning of 2 decades of this century, we have burnt our fingers. Meddling in Afghanistan has not brought anything to us. No benefit, absolutely no benefit. We, in last 30 years, we have been fighting against terrorism or different terrorist outfits. Way back in the 80s, our peace was disturbed. Pakistan was a very peaceful and very tolerant society, and we lost that in the process. We want to get back to that Pakistan or that sort of environment which is conducive to our economic well-being. Why would we, back Daesh or any of these? This is absolute, lie and nothing else. We want peace in Afghanistan, peace in Afghanistan, peace in Pakistan, peace in Afghanistan.
Media reports.
We don't want to get into any situation which disrupts our peace.
Media reports are suggesting that there is some difference of opinion, agreement during the course of negotiations about developing a mechanism and seeking written guarantees from the Afghan government, and that is where they are reluctant.
They agree, verbally they agree to what I'm telling you, and but they are reluctant for putting things in writing, signing an agreement to the effect which they agree verbally. And in my very humble opinion, it is because of their internal differences and their grouping within the government or the Taliban, Afghan Taliban, and their different factions. So they don't want to enter into anything in writing. So they don't want the world to have an evidence that the Taliban in Afghanistan have agreed to peace and these are the terms and conditions of peace. Otherwise, they don't even deny the presence of TTP also over there. They accept that they are there. They accept they have bases over there. They accept that verbally, they accept all these things that the Taliban are using their land or their soil to stage terrorist attacks inside Pakistan.
It looks like that they are very rigid during the course of the negotiations. God forbid, if this ceasefire agreement does not hold ground, what options does Pakistan have?
If our peace is disruptive, obviously we'll have to defend our country. We don't want to get into any aggressive posturing. Absolutely not. But if we are, our peace is disturbed and our territory is violated every day and every night, then the violation of our territory will be responded in kind. Let me clarify something. 3-4 times there was an agreement in Istanbul. They agreed to the terms and conditions. Every time there was an agreement, they would go out and call, I don't know who, in Kabul, and they would come back and say, no, we have to renegotiate. It happened 4 times. So there are people who want to have peace with Pakistan. They want to finish for all times to come the terrorist activity or backing of the terrorists operating in Pakistan or operating elsewhere in this region. Perhaps they want to live in peace with the rest of the countries of this region. But there are people over there who are, they have strings in Delhi, in India, or strings elsewhere. They don't want this region to live in peace. Because the peace means progress. Peace means economic well-being. So this perpetual war, perpetual tension in this region will never, bring robustness in our economies. Especially, I'm talking about Pakistan.
It looks like Pakistan is understandably quite upset, given the scale of the terrorism which has surged during last couple of months. Do you think, God forbid, if the negotiations derails for whatever reason, and if the situation reaches to a tipping point, and if there is a resumption of the same scale of the terrorism, regime change operation inside Afghanistan is an option?
No, we don't indulge in these things, regime changes or putting regime friendly to us. This is not our business. This is the business of Afghan people. What regime they want to have, we have absolutely nothing with that. This is their hell or heaven, whatever it is. But as far as our interests are concerned, which is number one, is the peace in Pakistan. And number two, this whole region should prosper. If there is peace in Afghanistan, economic well-being will be, established in Afghanistan and the region or countries around Afghanistan. But we have evidence, we have reasonable, arguments or evidence that some elements in Kabul are being sponsored or being dictated or being they are playing in the hands of Indians. India wants to engage Pakistan on both borders, on the eastern border and on the western border. It is their strategy. And in the ruling elite in Kabul, there are people who are wired with the Indians and for money, mostly money. I think money and nothing else, And so this is something which we have not yet been able to conclude an agreement between Kabul and Islamabad. The major reason I'll attribute to the Indian sponsorship, which is predicating any.
They're providing weapons to Afghan government?
They don't need weapons. They have all the weapons in the world in Afghanistan.
And India is also mobilizing its troops on parts of Pakistan's border. How do you see with these clashes, India mobilizing troops?
Yeah, we are in a low intensity war situation on our both borders, So we have to be very vigilant. We are very vigilant, and we are at the maximum alert on both the borders. Our valiant forces are engaged in almost on daily basis some sort of skirmishes or penetration of Taliban's or terrorists from Afghanistan side. So this is something we are living in a situation which is not the situation we would like to have in Pakistan or on our borders, but perhaps we don't have any choice. And if anything is imposed on us by either our western neighbor or eastern neighbor, we have the capability by God's grace, alhamdulillah, to respond to both of our neighbors if they resort to hostilities, to respond in kind and befitting response will be given. Just about 6 months back, we gave a very, very befitting, alhamdulillah, response to the Indians, and we have the capacity to settle any score with the Afghans also if this thing doesn't stop and there's a sponsorship of terrorism in Pakistan is continued.
Now on Gaza, since this peace accord happened, Israel has violated more than 100 times, and more than 256 people have been killed by Israel. What is your assessment? Will this peace accord, so-called peace accord, would hold ground in future?
Let's hope and pray that it holds ground and it is strengthened over the days and weeks and months and years. And a two-state solution is, this solution is ultimately realized, which is the dream of every peace-loving or in person in the region and elsewhere. But the behavior of Israel and their continuous killing and bombing and disturbing whatever fragile peace is there, that is something I think sooner or later Israel in the long run will pay a very heavy price for that. This sort of aggression and cruelty is nobody has witnessed this sort of cruelty in history or in the contemporary situations. I think it's totally inhuman. And the countries who have supported Israel, I think they abetted the genocide and the carnage at the level which has never been witnessed in human history.
Now, what options are with Pakistan on sending troops?
If there is a requirement and there is an agreement that the troops of different Muslim countries will be placed in Gaza to look after the ceasefire and to get the things rolling and restore peace over there and some restoration of normal life, like for instance rebuilding Gaza and schools, hospitals, and return to normal life. And Pakistan will play any part which will bring comfort to our Palestinian brothers and sisters.
How do you make out of Donald Trump's statement when he said that now it's going to be the job of the Muslim armies to dismantle Hamas?
Well, if Muslim armies are stationed over there to look after the peace in Gaza and restoration of normal life in Gaza, obviously, our primary responsibility of the peacekeepers over there will be to look after that there is no resort to violence by Israel. And if Israel resorts to violence, then obviously the world or the arrangement which is being finalized will have to either respond to that or draw the attention of the international community. And if that doesn't happen, then there'll be no stoppage of return to violence and return to confrontation and return to the situation which we have witnessed in the last 2 years or over decades, 4, 5 decades or 6 decades. And Hamas is an outcome of the cruelty which has been inflicted on the Palestinian people by Israel. It's a natural outcome. Any nation in the world will refuse to live under the cruelty or under the subservience of a nation as brutal, as cruel as Israel. You cannot blame Hamas for retaliating to the brutality of Israel. What they did was absolutely correct. Absolutely, that was the fundamental right of any human being anywhere in the world,
To resist it.
Yeah, to resist. So if the situation goes back to what it was, let's say 2 months back or 6 months back, then the resurgence of Hamas will be a natural outcome. The brutality which Israel has shown, they have raped prisoners over there. It's all over the media, international media. They have raped prisoners, they have killed prisoners, they have killed children. In such situation, if you compare, I think Hamas had every right and will have every right if the exploitation is repeated again. And then in that eventuality, the Muslim world will, I hope and pray, will stand with Hamas and the Palestinian people. It's not Hamas, it's the Palestinian people.
Exactly. My last question. Bilateral ties between Pakistan and Turkey, particularly defense collaboration about the warships. Can you just give us some update on this?
We have a very robust, cooperation, defense, all sorts of cooperation, but defense is one big avenue or sphere where Pakistan and Turkey have cooperated over the decades, and very extensive, very extensive. We are involved in shipbuilding. We are involved in so many other things, And one major item of trade between the two countries is actually defense equipment or defense-related trade. So this is something which we are brothers, and we share many things. We share history, we share religion, we share so many, almost everything is common between Turkey and Pakistan. And we hope that the trade in the two countries, there's so much of scope, the unimaginable, limits of scope we have. But we have, unfortunately, in the past, the trade between the two countries has not increased to the level where it should be. The scope of increase is phenomenal, and the two countries must pursue that.
Welcome back to the program. Now, joining us live from the Pakistani capital is political analyst Javed Rana. Javed, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
Javed, firstly, that was an excellent interview. Thank you so much for that interview, for that information that we now have on what the real situation is between both countries. Now, Javed, obviously, there are the Istanbul talks as well scheduled for today, and Pakistan and Afghanistan obviously are in Turkey, are in Istanbul, and they're going to negotiate. This is probably going to be the final round of those ceasefire talks. Now, how much pressure is on Afghanistan, Javed, right now to achieve this ceasefire and to ensure that this ceasefire lasts?
Well, I think this is the first time during the last 5 years, 6 years, that we have seen that on one side there is a military pressure on the Afghan government, and on the other hand there is a international pressure, and more particularly from the friendly countries who have reasonably significant political clout on the Afghan government, and they are Turkey and the Qatar government. So now it looks like the more focus is on the Turkish government, because it looks like that the Turkey is going out of the way to make it sure that there is some kind of a result-oriented talks. You may recall that the Pakistani delegation during the last course of the conversation, they were at the airport, the talks had failed, and then the Turkey recalled Pakistan's interlocutors, and then there was a resumption of talks, and as a result of which, then this ceasefire was extended till now. Now again, that is a very critical part of it, and I think that is the reason that there are some hopes that there may be some progress in these talks. As you have already heard Pakistan's defense minister, that God forbid, because this is right now a make and break situation, if there is no progress, if there is no meaningful progress, which means that if there is no mechanism is evolved to come down hard on the terrorists who have been provided shelter by the Afghan government, then there is a possibility of a resumption of hostilities between the two countries. And as the defense minister said, that then Pakistan will have to settle its scores with the Afghan government. Because in Pakistan, particularly within the corridors of power, there appears to be a accumulated sense of frustration. Because for the last couple of years, Pakistan has been making a formal and informal request with the Afghan government that this is the high time, they need to expel these terrorist groups, and if they cannot expel them, then at least they could have made it sure not to allow them to conduct terrorism. But on the other hand, what Pakistan has seen, that it's no longer just Pakistan-based militant groups who've been provided shelter inside Afghanistan, they are attacking Pakistan, but now there are Afghan nationals, Afghan citizens who are also involved in terrorism, who are also conducting these terrorist attacks. So therefore, I think now there is a feeling in Pakistan that perhaps Afghan government has some kind of a ideological agenda which it wants to impose onto Pakistan. And to begin with, when they say that Pakistan needs to talk directly to its militants groups, which is better known as Taliban Pakistan or TTP, that is where I think the real problem lies, because during the course of the negotiations, TTP would demand a separate province, some kind of autonomy on the region bordering with Afghanistan, and that is where Pakistan smells a rat, that Afghanistan wants to occupy Pakistan's territory. Therefore, I think, God forbid, if these talks fails, then I foresee a resumption of hostility at a time when India has already mobilized its troops on Pakistani side of the border. It looks like a very tough situation.
Javed, the Pakistani Defense Minister Khawaja Asif, he said that Pakistan wants peace in Pakistan and in Afghanistan. So what is the Pakistani government doing to achieve that peace?
Well, Pakistan, to begin with, for the last 5 years, have been using all possible informal and formal mechanisms, sending religious scholars, trying to prevail upon these terrorist groups because they are pursuing so-called ideological agenda, trying to convince Afghan government, their scholars, that under what particular Sharia law they can attack a neighboring Muslim country. What is the agenda? What do they want to achieve? Nobody understands what are they trying to achieve. So this is where the now suspicion really lies, that the Afghan government has an ideological agenda. They want to impose their harsher brand of Islam onto Pakistan, and as a part of the strategy, they want to perhaps occupy parts of Pakistan's tribal region. And you know it that Afghan government does not recognize the borders. This 2,700-kilometer long stretch of border between two countries. This is known as the Durand Line, which was established by the British government in the late 90s, and then these territories were handed over by the then Afghan king to the Britain. Pakistan had never a territorial dispute with the Afghan government, so things have already been settled, and they are trying to make it an issue. So therefore, I think with Pakistan, the options, it looks like, are very limited, and there is an element of frustration. Just this year, 500 people have been killed, and among them, 316 were Pakistan's military officials and soldiers. So I think no government can afford to such a big losses to its military. That is a situation which is not tenable. So I think because of this frustration, Pakistan conducted airstrikes on the Afghan side of the border, and also in Kabul there was some kind of attack. And then Afghanistan government in retaliation conducted attacks on 128 checkpoints on the very 2,700-kilometer long border. And from there onwards, I think the situation has gone from the bad to the worst. And then Pakistan obviously destroyed Afghan military infrastructure, and the situation was getting from bad to the worst when these talks started. So now there's another element, and that element is of India. You know, Pakistan's arch rival. Just last May, Pakistan had a brief war with India, which Pakistan has beaten them up. Now, Afghan government is closing up with India. And that is a development which Pakistan see in a very uncomfortable manner, because in Pakistan the feeling is that these are the same Afghan Taliban who were provided shelter inside Pakistan by Pakistan's intelligence agencies behind the scene, and they were provided all kind of support. They were attacking NATO forces, and when they came into the power, there was jubilation in Pakistan. And now, when they are in power, and they have become Pakistan's enemy. So this is something which is shocking for the people in Pakistan, because at the end of the day, it's a Muslim brother country. Both countries share the culture. Both countries share the same religion, and even the bordering regions of Afghanistan and Pakistan, Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province and Balochistan province, two provinces have the same sect of Islam, which they have. So I think it's with such a huge similarity, sharing geography, sharing religion, culture, everything, having a shared economy. It is ununderstandable as to why Afghan government is providing shelter to the terrorists. This is something which is not understandable for many Pakistanis, and that is why we have seen that there was a retaliation from Pakistan side of the border. But again, options with Pakistan are very limited at a time when the military is in an open political confrontation with the provincial government, which in Pakistan's northwestern region, and the government of jailed former Prime Minister Imran Khan's party. And that is the real problem, because there is no appetite in Pakistan's Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province for more military operations. There have been 22 military operations, and millions of people were displaced, and there were huge collateral damages. Tens of thousands of the people were killed, mostly in these terrorist attacks. So people really hate the TTP in Pakistan, but at the same time, they don't have love for the military when it comes to the military operations. So there are very difficult choices to make for Pakistan, because in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province is not ready for new military operation, number one. And if there is a resumption of the hostilities, Afghans can exploit the situation because they have specialization in insurgency war, and that becomes difficult for a regular army to contain. Pakistan can damage Afghan government's military infrastructure to a large extent, but again, in short term there could be military gains, but in the long run, I think it would be problematic for Pakistan.
Javed, on the issue of Gaza, the Pakistani defense minister says that Pakistan would be ready to send a force, a peacekeeping force to Gaza, and he also said that Israel is going to pay the price for its genocide in Gaza as well, sooner or later. And most importantly, something that I noticed at the end was the fact that he said that Hamas has the right to resist the Israeli atrocities. So how would Israel react to such comments? Would Israel want a Pakistani peacekeeping force in the occupied Gaza Strip?
Well, I think I have not heard such a bold observation and comment and response from any of Pakistani official and minister ever before. And what he said actually represented the views of people in Pakistan on the streets, people on the streets of the Muslim countries and probably elsewhere in the world. You know, Hamas is not a terrorist group. Islamic Jihad is not a terrorist group. Palestinian Authority is not a terrorist party. So these are the terminology which has been imposed onto the media, and that is what he really contradicted. And before this interview, I know that Israel was feeling very comfortable with the possibility of Pakistani troops deployment inside Gaza. I can't say what will be their reaction. I think behind the scene there have been some kind of understanding between Pakistan and apartheid Israel, maybe through different interlocutors, where Israel was comfortable. But I think after this interview, I think Pakistan, it looks like, has made its position very clear that in the event of the breach of the ceasefire inside Gaza, Pakistan military and other militaries would have a kind of a situation where it will either have to retaliate against Israel, or it will have to seek some kind of international, it will have to approach some international forum to do something against Israel. So again, this is a very tough situation. It's not just Pakistan. It's also in Indonesia and other countries. They're also making public their observation that this is going to be a very difficult choice for all these troops. But we have also seen that there is a draft resolution in the UN Security Council, and the draft resolution, according to the initial reports, does suggest that it is a very ambiguous. The very punchline of which is to basically giving Israel a right to carry out attacks inside Gaza, because the language, we can just make an assumption, because they have very ambiguous language in their draft. And then all these troops which are going to be deployed in Gaza, they would not be able to do anything if Israel breaches the ceasefire, a ceasefire agreement. Again, so in that broader context, I think before the second phase of this so-called peace accord starts, I think there will be a lot of difficulties. how the UN Security Council resolution is going to have a kind of a shape where it will be balanced, where it talks about the two-state solution, where it make it sure that if there is a breach of agreement, ceasefire agreement, then the deployed soldiers from Muslim countries would be able to retaliate against either party, not only against Hamas. And I think there's a clear and meaningful expression from Pakistan's foreign minister, and understandably so, about clear reluctance to be involved in any activity inside Gaza, which means disarming Hamas and other militant groups. So I think these are the positive developments. And then the point that he made, that was very interesting. When he came to know that the Israel does not feel comfortable with the Turkish troops inside Gaza because Israel perceives Turkish troops could be possibly sympathetic towards Hamas. I think his response was an excellent. And he said, we are all sympathetic to Hamas because it is a resistant group, because of the scale of the brutalities that Palestinians have been going through. So there would be a natural response where Hamas, like militant groups, the fighters would hit back. That's quite natural. I think that was a natural flow of his expression, and that is something frankly speaking, unheard of by any Pakistani official so far.
Political analyst Javed Rana, thank you so much for that interview and for being a part of today's program. Thank you for that analysis. That brings us to the end of our program. Thanks for joining us. Bye for now.